Good morning. Well, we are first thing Sunday morning, and I've remembered that I didn't pull this network cable through to the space that I wanted into. So I've got a little bit of work to do this morning, just measuring up the placement for this. I'll pop that panel off, the one that's up towards the driver's side at the front, and just feed this little cable through. So this is going to go from the inverter through to a little monitor control unit, and this is what basically will be sending the signal from that little monitor control unit back to the inverter to turn it on, turn it off, do whatever it needs to do. So I want that up towards the middle GPO. So that's this morning's project. And as I was lying in bed this morning, just trying to wake up, it's a lazy Sunday morning. Why am I rushing? I was thinking about the downlights that we're going to be putting up a little bit further up there, little LED downlights, and also the vent fan area. And I think I'll put a little time into boxing those areas off so that when I put the insulation in, it's completely clean and it's closed off, as far as no insulation being able to potentially fall through into that area and cause any complications. I'm not too sure what the housing on the things like the LED lights are going to be like, whether or not I need to make sure that there's no insulation around those. In a house, I suppose it's very different. You can just sort of keep that area clear. But in a vehicle with how much movement there is, I probably want to make sure I'm actually boxing that off so that there's no potential for any kind of sliding of anything into that space if there is a requirement to keep it separate. So I'd rather not burn the place down. God, that sounds dodgy. Yeah, so we'll work on that one. And I suppose the other thing that came to mind when I was putting insulation in, I'm grabbing these big bats and cutting into them, and all that was going through my head was Snuffleupagus from Sesame Street. And I'm like, these bats look like Jim Henson's Snuffleupagus has been, I think it was Jim Henson, been stuffed into a plastic bag, and then when you open it up, it's just like everywhere. So yeah, apologies Snuffy, you're now filling the walls in the van, mate. That's enough of that dark humour. I'm going to get stuck into it, cut the hole, pull this through, and start playing with other bits and pieces, and see how we go with getting stuff up. We'll see you in a minute. right, well, that's the insulation up, and you Gravity, I win. All right, that first support for the roof has gone up there. Maybe you could argue that I overdid anchoring it. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. 14? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Yeah, wow, 14 screws holding that piece up. Yes, I probably did overdo it, but that's not coming down in any hurry. The plan will be after we've got the cable, we'll run the ply across. I might even get away with, I'm going to measure it, because the ply is 1.2 meters wide, running the ply halfway. I'm not too sure. I might even just try and go for a whole sheet of ply and then a trim on the edge, but that's going to depend on how much curvature there is between those 2 points. I really don't want to find that I've got ply curving in the wrong area. I might need to just measure it and make sure the next support that runs across is going to be at that 1.2 meter-ish mark, so that the two pieces of ply can overlap each other, and that way I can probably alternate the positioning of screws, toggle it across. What we will be doing with the roof once we've got the ply on is we're going to put a felt finish over the top of it, so it'll be a nice light grey sort of colour. And I'm leaving the space directly above me, which you can't see clear. I've got to build some boxing around that for the fan to make sure that the insulation doesn't creep in. And there's a couple of spot downlights up the end there too. I'll be doing the same thing with those. So anyhow, I have the next support to put up and then do the two in the middle after I've measured up where I need them to be. If I can space it so that, as I said, get them evenly positioned, but they're on the overlap for that 1.2 meters, that'll be perfect. All right, I'm going to keep going. Okay, well that was challenging to say the least. My battle with gravity again. I still beat you. So measuring that out, I had a look at the curvature that we've got. And if I start at this lip here and go across, on the other side, I'm effectively going to finish just on that joist there. So that's 1.2 meters with the curve that we've got. So the plan now is to run some up the center. So I've got a couple of little sections here that I can do. There's some existing wiring for the cabin lights in here, which we're going to reuse, and we'll put some LED lights on those instead, and that'll hopefully give us a bit more of a an efficient use of energy. Those will only be used when the doors are open and closed, so it'll be pretty straightforward. But at this point in time, I have got probably half a dozen little pieces to do, and probably 2.5 meters of the same timber. So I'm going to measure them up, cut them in lengths, and then just run the joists as I need to. And then I'm going to box off this area. I'll expose the wires and have the old cabling hanging down for the cabin lights, and I'll build the boxing just to the left and the right of this beam as you go across, and the other beam there. So the two inner beams immediately to the left and the right is where the two downlights are going to go. So we'll be able to figure that out. That'll give us a nice consistent curvature to attach it to, with the 2.3 meters, I think it is, in the curvature from one edge to the other. We'll arrange for that to meet in the middle as we go through, and that'll give us about 42 millimeters of a lip to be able to attach it to, and it'll also make it a bit easier to control, I think, as you know, just being 1.2 odd meter lengths, or 1.25. No, not that, 625 millimeters. Yeah, per piece, and then be 1 and 2, 3 and 4. We'll get them as snug as we can get them, and just keep playing the game. The next thing that we'll do, well, I've got to make sure I've got the cabling sorted out before I put that roof assembly up. So chances are by the end of today there'll be a part of it up, but this section will still be exposed because I'll need to run cables through and along and feed them over to the cavities where I need them there. There's no other wiring apart from a strip going here. The two fans will get mounted there, which I'll build some, probably, I don't know, half the size of this piece here, which is what, about 330 by 200. Some pads. We'll use a 12mm marine ply, and we'll probably fit those sort of up around here. We'll run them. I think we'll run them in between the marine, between the two supports, and just try and box them in as tight as we can get them. So that way there's something to attach the fans to. I'll leave a notch for wiring to be able to feed down, and we'll cut a hole through them. And yeah, it's going to be, yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll figure it out. It's not impossible. We've achieved other things more challenging before, so this is another one to add to the list. I'm going to keep going. Okay, what a day. Wow. Been fighting with this for a little while, but I think it's worked out all right. We've got this space all clear for the vent that's going to go in there. Yes, I know, mate. I can hear you. Everyone else on YouTube can hear you too. Klaus is just literally on the balcony there with his head at a hole that big. Hello, Baxi. Baxi's having a look too. It's a little peek hole. They're just having a look out, barking at us. Anyhow, that's all boxed in, so the risk of having any insulation migrate into that cavity where the vent is going to be installed is greatly reduced. I've got a little space just here to run the wiring through, so that should be, it's probably about 19 millimeters by about 40 millimeters, so heaps of space to be able to run the cabling in there. You guys can do whatever they need to. There's two boxed up areas at the end I've started just there. That's going to be for the downlights. So those two LED lights there, they've got roughly a, we'll call it 200 by 100 footprint. There's space to be able to have, you know, cabling or anything else recessed back in there.
and the depth of it is probably 50 millimeters, around about 50. So that should hopefully be enough space for them to do what they need to. There will be 3mm ply going on this, so that'll all tuck this stuff up nice and tight. I'm going to wait until Chrissy's back to give me a hand with that, because I've got a funny feeling it's going to be a bit of a job. So outside of that, I have, not sure you can see that, just out of the frame there. So the wiring for the original door light there and here has been completely disconnected and bad, and the space, I'm in two minds as to what to do about it. I might just leave it the way it is, or I may put some 3mm ply in around the edges like I have done here to sort of box it off and make it a bit tidy and give them a bit of a bigger footprint to be able to work with as far as putting in any downlights there. Hopefully the same sort as what's going in there, but we're not picky. The guys were talking about putting in something that has the ability, a bit like the King's rock lights, that can toggle between white and a yellowish orange light, which attracts less bugs. So I've got a set of the rock lights that I picked up. Here we go. These things here. So 4 of them with about 1.5 meters of cable on each one. The plan for these is to run them off the back door, so that when the back's open, there'll be 2 lights in the top there and 2 at the end that'll illuminate that back working area, kitchen area. So if we're cooking and it's dark, we can see what's going on. I am keen on getting some more rock lights and fitting them to the underbody of the vehicle. Reason for that isn't so much for rocks as it is for, hello mate, I'll be up with you in a minute. I'll just finish this and I'll come and play with you. Is that okay? Are you sure? 5 minutes, I promise. 5 minutes. So I know everyone here knows as well. Are you sure? Really? No. That's not what you were telling me this morning. Okay. So the rock lights, and the reason for putting those around the body of the vehicle, the underside of the vehicle, for me really comes down to being aware of what we're stepping out onto. We'll do a video about this a little bit later, and Chrissy can talk about her perspective on my encounter with certain reptiles in Australia. My encounter, singular, certain reptiles, plural. My encounter with a certain reptile here in Australia. There you go, fix that one up. Interesting story, very interesting. And it's partially the motivator for why we're doing what we're doing now. We're not living in fear, but we want to be aware of what's on the ground before we get out of the vehicle. So wait for that video, that'll come. We'll loop back in and we'll tag it in this one and do all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to clean up. It's 1 o'clock. See you later.